5 years ago, when I had my near-death experience. I had been in the hospital for a while. I had pneumonia, MRSA, and a temperature of 107.4 degrees. I developed sepsis, and a few days later, septic shock. My organs were shutting down, and the last was my heart. And I was dead. No one knows how long I laid there before they found me, but I was not there anymore. I had moved on. My parents and my brother-in-law, all deceased, were there waiting for me. After our reunion, they told me I had to go back, but not right away. I had a journey to make, and I had to make it alone. I followed a path which took me to the entrance of a forest. It was very dark and scary, and somehow I knew this was purgatory. And I know a lot of people don't believe in purgatory, but I'm just telling what I saw and felt. I continued down the path until I came to the top of a hill. As I looked down and over the horizon, I saw nothing but fire, and I was petrified. I knew I didn't have to go any further and turned around to go back to my parents. They told me to go back to my body. I was in a coma, but not to fear. I woke up a week later and I was on a ventilator and a feeding tube. And I don't even remember how many IVs. But I was calm, not upset or scared at all. I had survived the heart attack, the MRSA, pneumonia, and the septicemia, which is when you get bacteria in your blood. I guess nobody believed I was going to make it. I believe it was a warning that I needed to change my ways. I wasn't a bad person, I just wasn't particularly good. But I found God again, and am trying very hard to make sure I don't have to see one of those two places again. This NDE was shared by Deborah Ann Weaver and happened in 2019.
Good evening. I just got out of hospital yesterday after a very weird experience a couple of days ago. It's kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. Just this past Monday, I went to a doctor appointment with my wife to see her primary care doctor, which referred her to a cardiologist. After the appointment, we had a few errands to run, and as we were driving down the road, my heart rate seemed to speed up and my hands and feet began to tingle. I told this to my wife, which also happens to be an RN, so she began to assess me as she's driving, asking if I have chest pain, headache, etc. I had none of this, but the tingling sensation continued to spread up my arms and legs, and it also seemed like I was trying to breathe with a pillow over my face. The last thing I remember was her taking a right turn, and I guess I blacked out and stopped breathing. For me, this is where my odd experience began. I found myself in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people that all seemed to be focused on me. It was really bright, but there did not seem to be a source of the light. It seemed to be all around me. I distinctly remember a woman with blonde hair dressed in red as being the closest person to me. It seemed like I was about 15 or 20 feet from her. It's hard to describe the feeling I felt, but the best way for me to describe it would be total satisfaction or total comfort or total belonging. I'm really at a loss for words on how to describe it. I really wanted to get closer to the people I saw, but I remember speaking to this woman in red, telling her I'm not ready to die and that I can't leave her, her being my wife. The next thing I remember is my eyes opening and my wife performing CPR on me. I really don't know what to make of this since it was only 2 days ago. I'm really trying to wrap my brain around the whole situation. This story was shared by Keith Fjellstead and happened in 2024.
I believe we have the NDE, life after death, and God all wrong. In 2022, I apparently had an NDE in my sleep while sick with COVID. I experienced the NDE, but believe each of our own NDEs are based on our own beliefs and memories. Religious Christians may meet Jesus, others will meet past family members, but I believe these are merely part of the passage to the beyond, akin to hallucinations. But bear with me. I believe I went beyond. After the initial NDE, in which I interacted with an angelic spirit, I was sent into another realm of pure light, cosmic-level love, peace and bliss beyond our wildest imagination. There was nothing physical in that realm. It was just an unbelievably beautiful state of being, beyond our comprehension and cannot be described in mortal terms. My physical existence, memories, thoughts were washed away, and I rejoined with whatever you want to call it, God, God force, cosmic conscious. I was sent back, and this experience will live with me forever. From this I am of the firm belief that we do not understand what God is. God is not of human form. I believe God is the powerful cosmic force within everything and everyone, and it binds us together. When we pass, we shed our earthly existence and rejoin that cosmic force. This NDE was shared by Harry Pavalan and happened in 2022.
When we die, our shell is disposed of, and when it's done dispersing our atoms elsewhere, what becomes of our conscious awareness? When I theoretically died, where did I go before waking up in the intensive care unit? The answer is, I was aware of nothing. I didn't see dead people wandering around waiting to greet me to my new permanent home, nor did I see a white light. I experienced nothingness. Like I noted in one of my essays, I prayed for death to escape the pain. I also experienced a peace that passes all understanding before my NDE occurred. In other words, I no longer cared if my soul, if I have one, would or could somehow outlive my body and mind. This is my hypothesis. It's just a working theory. I died not believing in heaven or hell, and thus, I saw nothing after my NDE, whereas a Christian may see images of both heaven and hell during their crossover. I didn't experience seeing my deceased parents during my NDE. Like I said, I experienced nothing during my death. However, after spending 8 days in the hospital following my near-death encounter, I was discharged. My brain was still a bit wobbly when I first got home, but within a few days, I noticed that my mind was working differently than before. I felt reborn. I couldn't find the old person that once occupied my brain. He was gone, and replaced with a new narrator. And that's when I experienced an incredible lightness of being. This feeling of total comfort, security, and optimism stayed with me for 3.5 years before it started to wane. I felt sad to see it go, but in hindsight, it had to atrophy for me to experience what came next. And what came next was, well, incredible. The rewiring of my brain provided me with a way to experience the other side, but that's another story for another day. Question: to those of you that have suffered an NDE, did you encounter your old self or a new self upon waking up from your experience? A young Ernest Hemingway, gravely injured by an exploding shell on a World War I battlefield, wrote in a letter home that dying is a very simple thing. If I should have died, it would have been very easy for me, quite the easiest thing I ever did. Hemingway describes his NDE in more detail in The Snows of Kilimanjaro. Until we meet again, this NDE was shared by Alan Clark.